On my 70th birthday, my daughter said, "Don't expect a party." So I smiled, blew out an invisible candle, and quietly canceled the $7.50 inheritance she was counting on. "Who would even come to your birthday, huh? You think you're famous or something?" she scoffed, loud enough for the whole kitchen to hear. Then she turned to the pantry and grabbed a jar. "Cake does not make you classy, Grandma. If you really want a celebration, I'll stick a candle in a jar of Nutella for you. But a party? Don't even dream about it." She laughed, tossing her hair back like she had just delivered the punchline of a cruel joke. My granddaughter, only 10, giggled along, echoing her mother without understanding the weight of those words. "Yeah," she chimed in, her little voice cutting deeper than she knew. "Grandma's too old for birthdays anyway." I stood there, silent, my hands still dusted with flour from the small vanilla cake I had baked for myself. It was not much, just enough for one, a few strawberries on top. I had placed it gently in the center of the old oak table, next to a frame holding a faded family photo back when my daughter still let me hug her, before success soured her heart. A few white roses from the backyard sat beside it, clipped fresh that morning. I had even lit a single candle, not because I expected anyone to celebrate with me, but because I still believed that acknowledging life, my life, mattered. But at that moment, in the kitchen I helped pay for, in the house my late husband and I bought decades ago, I realized what I had become to them. A ghost that cooked, a nuisance with a pension, a background character in their perfect little show. I did not say a word. I looked at the candle's flame, small but alive. I leaned forward and blew it out, slowly, the way I had done every year since I was a girl. Except this time there was no singing, no clapping, no smiling faces, just silence, and the faint sound of the dishwasher running behind me. I blew out the candle, and with it, I blew out the last flicker of hope that they might still see me as something more than a burden. I did not sigh. I did not speak, because silence had become the only language they seemed willing to hear from me. My daughter grabbed her purse, heels clicking across the tile as she barked instructions to the nanny. "Dinner's in the oven, don't burn it! And keep Mom out of the living room while the team's here, all right? She's always got some story to tell. It gets exhausting." I turned away from the table and walked slowly to my room, the one in the back of the house next to the garage, where the water heater clicks in the middle of the night and the walls sweat in summer. I did not cry. At 70 years old, you learn that some tears are just too old to fall. I closed the door gently behind me and sat on the edge of my bed. It creaked like it always did. I reached under the mattress and pulled out the file folder I kept there, not because I was hiding it, but because I was waiting for a moment like this. A moment that proved, without a doubt, that I no longer owed them anything. Inside that folder was the updated version of my will, signed, sealed, and notarized 3 weeks earlier. I had not told anyone, not even my old friend Doris, who still called me every Tuesday to check if I was alive. They all thought I had left everything, my savings, my bonds, the shares I still quietly owned in a media company I helped fund in the 80s, to my daughter. They assumed, entitled children often do. I pulled out the will, reread the paragraph that made everything official, and smiled, not out of spite, but out of clarity. To my only daughter, who once told me not to expect a birthday party, I bequeath exactly that. Nothing. May she find joy in the silence she so generously gave me. They had no idea the inheritance was worth over $7,500,000, 0 cents. They thought I was just an old voice from the radio, collecting dust and pensions. They forgot that voices leave echoes, and mine was about to become louder than ever. They thought today was just another day, that I would fold quietly, as I always had. But what they did not know, what she did not know, is that today, on my 70th birthday, I did not just blow out a candle. I also blew away the future she thought was hers, and I did it with the same grace she mistook for weakness. My name used to mean something. Ellen Carter. You could say it in any small town across Texas and people would nod. The voice from Channel 12, they would say. That's her. There was a time when folks turned down their radios and leaned in just to hear me read the weather report, My voice warned them of tornadoes, delivered the names of the fallen in foreign wars, and reminded them every 4th of July why we still mattered as a country. I was not a celebrity, no. I was something firmer. A presence people relied on, a voice that felt like home. For 2 decades, I sat behind a microphone 5 days a week and told the truth with a voice strong enough to calm fear and soft enough to carry sorrow. People wrote in letters just to thank me for sounding like home. But fame fades quickly when you leave the room. I walked away from that job the day my husband died. He collapsed on a Thursday afternoon in the kitchen while making tuna salad. By Monday, the funeral had passed, and I was holding my 12-year-old daughter in one arm while packing away my radio station pass with the other. They offered to keep me on part-time, but I said no. My daughter needed a mother, not a headline. I do not regret that decision, not for a second. I just never expected to be resented for it. From the moment puberty touched her voice, my daughter resented my past. It did not help that teachers always smiled wider at parent-teacher conferences. "You're Ellen Carter's daughter?" They would beam, completely ignoring her name. "You're lucky. Your mom's a legend." But legends are heavy, and I, without meaning to, became her weight. She started rolling her eyes anytime someone brought up the station. By high school, she refused to let me attend her theater performances. "You'll take the spotlight," she snapped one night. "You always do, even when you're not trying." I tried to shrink myself. I stopped correcting people when they recognized me at the grocery store. I stopped sharing stories from my old job at the dinner table. I even took down the framed newspaper article from the hallway, the one where they called me the calm before the storm. She called it embarrassing. The older she got, the louder her bitterness grew. "Mom," she once said during a particularly cruel moment at Thanksgiving, "you're not anyone special anymore. You were just a woman with a mic, reading things someone else wrote. And now, you're just someone who won't shut up about it." I wish I could say that hurt more than it did, but it did not surprise me. The truth is, my daughter never forgave me for being someone before I was her mother. To her, my past was not a point of pride. It was a constant, invisible enemy. Something to compete with. Something to resent. She began rewriting our history, piece by piece. In her version, I was never on air. I was just gone a lot. In her version, I did not give up everything to raise her. I just settled. She started telling people she was self-made, as if the life I had bled for was some hand-me-down she never wanted. I watched her build a business, a brand, and eventually a persona that depended on pretending I had never mattered. And for years, I let her. I told myself it was her way of growing up, that she would come back around, that all children rebel, some just sharper than others. But then came the day she said it out loud, in front of her own daughter, with a laugh in her throat and contempt in her eyes. "Mom, nobody cares about your old stories. The world's moved on. Maybe you should too." That was when I knew. It was not just forgetfulness. It was erasure. Deliberate, convenient, cold. My voice, once trusted to carry truth to an entire state, had become, to her, just static. And yet, I never stopped using it. Not really. I still read aloud to myself every night. I still narrated recipes in my head when I cooked. I still whispered news headlines under my breath when the radio came on in the kitchen. You do not just turn off a voice like that. You tuck it away, like an old record no one plays anymore, but that still holds every note of who you used to be. She thought my silence meant I had forgotten how to speak. She was wrong. I was just waiting for the right moment to remind her that I still knew how to be heard. When my daughter asked me to move in, she said it like a favor. "Just until I get the business off the ground," she explained. "You'll have your own room, and it'll be good for the kids to have someone around." I had just turned 63. My knees were starting to ache when I climbed stairs, and my pension was modest but enough. I had a small house, a garden I adored, and a few neighbors who still called me Miss Ellen like I was the evening news again. But I said yes. Not because I needed to, because I thought I was needed. I sold the house, gave her half the proceeds to help with her startup, packed my favorite books, a few old dresses, and the radio from the station I never stopped loving. I told myself it would be temporary, a year, maybe 2, long enough to help her get back on her feet. The first few months were full of promises. "Mom, I couldn't do this without you. You're a lifesaver, just until I find the right nanny. I cooked dinner, picked up the kids from school, sat with them while they did their homework. I was tired, yes, but fulfilled. Then the shift began, slowly at first. My room was moved to the back of the house, not because of space, she said, but so the kids don't wake you up. My favorite armchair disappeared from the living room, donated apparently because it didn't match the aesthetic. She started having guests over, clients, colleagues, brand people, and with them came the instructions. Don't come into the kitchen while we're filming. Try not to be in the hallway when the team arrives. And please, no old stories during dinner. The kids have been having nightmares. Nightmares from what? The time I told them about covering a hurricane? The story about my first apartment with their grandfather, where the walls were thin but we were happy? I was becoming invisible. Worse than invisible, I was inconvenient. It reached the point where I was no longer included at the table. When there were family dinners, I was asked to eat early or wait until after. We only have 6 chairs, she once said, shrugging. As if I were not blood. As if I were furniture. She started leaving clothes outside my door. These are for you, she said once, holding up a pair of beige sweatpants and a shapeless cardigan. Just something more comfortable to wear around the house, you know? In case someone drops by. Translation, your old dresses embarrass me. You embarrass me. I began to feel like I was taking up space that no one wanted to admit was mine. I cooked their meals, folded their laundry, rocked her youngest to sleep through a fever while she attended a launch party, and yet I was spoken to like a volunteer who had overstayed her welcome. But I kept quiet. That is what women of my generation do. We endure. We don't explode, we erode. Until that afternoon. It was a Sunday. My daughter was hosting a garden luncheon for her new wellness brand. The backyard was pristine, white chairs, crystal pitchers of lemon water, little signs that said breathe in cursive. I helped set up the tables. I wasn't asked to, but I did it anyway, out of habit, maybe, out of hope. I wore a soft blue dress that I used to wear to church, modest, simple, a little faded, but still me. As I passed one of the guests a plate of cucumber sandwiches, she smiled politely and asked, "Do you do the landscaping as well or just the catering?" I blinked. She was serious. Before I could speak, I looked at my daughter, just a few feet away. She heard it. I know she did. She looked at me, then at the woman, and instead of correcting her, she laughed. "I get that a lot," she said. "Mom's always fussing in the garden." That was it. "No, she's not the gardener, she's my mother. No, she built everything I have." That laugh, light, effortless, told me everything. Image was more important than truth, and I was no longer part of hers, just a small, polite chuckle that kept her image intact. I excused myself and went inside. Sat in the laundry room, on the cold tile floor, between a basket of folded towels and a mop I used more often than I should. I did not cry. Instead, I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out the old lapel mic from my broadcasting days. It was silly, I know. I kept it with me like a talisman, a reminder that I once had a voice, that I once mattered. Sitting there, I clipped it onto my collar, not because anyone was listening, but because it reminded me that I still had something to say. It was just a box, wooden, walnut-stained, with a small gold clasp. I had polished it the night before with a soft cloth and trembling hands. Inside, wrapped in blue velvet, lay the family heirloom, my mother's jewelry set, a modest string of pearls, a matching brooch, and earrings shaped like tiny blossoms, not valuable by market standards, but rich in meaning. My grandmother wore them on her wedding day. My mother wore them the day she voted for the first time. I wore them when I spoke at my husband's funeral. I gave it to my daughter on a Thursday afternoon, thinking perhaps sentiment still meant something. She opened the box, stared for a beat, then scoffed. "This looks like it belongs in a museum, not on my neck," she said, half laughing. "You really think I'd wear this?" She pushed the box across the table with one finger as if it contained dust instead of history. "I'm not into vintage, Mom. Besides, I already have a stylist." I sat across from her, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat like fishhooks. So I nodded, took the box back, and left it on the kitchen counter like an abandoned gift. By dinner, it was gone. I never saw it again. 2 days later, I found it in the junk drawer. next to expired coupons and spare charger cords. That weekend, I tried again. I cooked her favorite, roast chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes with cream, cornbread from scratch. I set the table with cloth napkins and real plates, not the disposable kind she usually used. I even lit a candle, hoping maybe the warm light would soften whatever wall had grown between us. My granddaughter sat across from me, chattering about school and a book she was reading. She liked it when I told stories, especially the ones about when I worked at the station. Her eyes would light up when I did the old sign-off voice. "This is Ellen Carter, Channel 12 News, wishing you a safe night and a better morning." So as we ate, she asked about the time I covered the blizzard in '82. I smiled, opened my mouth, and began. I remember that winter like it was yesterday. The roads were shut down for 3 days, and we had to broadcast from the basement with a backup generator. I had to... "Enough, Mom." My daughter's voice cut across the table like a knife. "Can we just eat without hearing another war story? God, it's always some disaster with you. The kids don't need that." I stopped mid-sentence. The candle flickered. My granddaughter looked down at her plate, embarrassed. My son-in-law kept chewing, unfazed. I folded my napkin slowly and placed it beside my plate. "I wasn't telling a war story," I said, softly. "I was telling a memory." "Same difference," she muttered, already reaching for her phone. "No one wants to hear it." I excused myself from the table and went to my room, though at that point, calling it my room felt generous. It was the converted laundry room with no closet and a view of the fence. I closed the door, sat on the bed, and reached under it. There, in a shoebox taped with aging masking tape, lay my old cassette recorder. The kind I used in the early days of radio, before digital wiped the world clean. I pulled it out, popped in a cassette labeled Voice Test EC, and hit play. The tape crackled. Then came the sound I hadn't heard in years. My voice, young and clear. "This is Ellen Carter, coming to you live with the morning update." I paused the tape and let the silence settle. I had spent decades making people feel seen, informed, comforted. Now, I was told my memories were burdens, my stories embarrassments, my voice obsolete. But as I sat there, cradling that recorder like an old friend, something shifted. No one wanted to hear me at the dinner table? Fine, I would find a different table. No one wanted my stories? I would tell them to strangers. People once listened to me. They trusted me. They leaned in when I spoke. And if my own daughter had decided I no longer mattered, then maybe it was time to remind the world that I did. I turned the recorder back on and whispered into it, softly but with purpose. "I was once heard, and I will be again. Just not here. Not in this house. Not by her." The candle from dinner still burned in my mind. Not a symbol of warmth anymore, but of fire waiting to spread. The first time I uploaded a video, my hands were shaking. I had created the account under a different name, Someone's Mother, it said. No photo, no biography, no hashtags that would lead them to me, just a blank profile and a story to tell. I set up my old phone against a salt shaker on the kitchen counter. I turned off the lights and left only the small lamp over the sink glowing. In the frame, I placed the little vanilla cake I had baked for myself weeks earlier. The one no one had touched, the one I never got to slice. Beside it, a single candle, unlit. The video started with silence. Then my voice, soft, deliberate, cut through. "My name is not important, but today, I turned 70. Alone." I paused. "They live in the same house, you see. My daughter, her husband, my grandchildren. But I was told not to expect a party, not even a card. And so I made my own cake, sat at my own table, sang to myself, and when the flame flickered, I made a wish not for more time, but for one more moment of dignity. That was all. 42 seconds. No face, no drama, just a voice that had once told the truth for a living and now was whispering it for survival. If my truth could not survive in this house, then perhaps it would breathe elsewhere, among strangers with ears, not expectations. I posted the video and closed the app. I did not expect what happened next. By morning, there were hundreds of comments. People, strangers from all over, saying they heard me, that they had grandmothers like me, that they were the forgotten too. Someone reposted the video on Reddit with the caption, "This broke me, she deserves more." Then it hit Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. People made duets with it, lighting their own candles in solidarity. Within a week, the account had 400,000 followers. My inbox was full of messages. "Tell us more. Please don't stop. Your voice feels like home." I hadn't felt needed in years. Now, I was needed by thousands, so I kept going. The next video was called "Things I Was Never Allowed to Say Out Loud." I talked about invisible labor, about cooking meals that no one thanked me for, about folding towels in silence while listening to people talk over me, about erasing myself to fit in. Still no face, just a view of my hands, steady, aged, strong, folding napkins, stirring soup, lighting candles that never got blown out. People listened. One comment said, "You could read a grocery list and I'd still cry." Another said, "My mom died before I could say thank you. Thank you for sounding like her." I cried for the first time in months, but not from pain, from being heard. Still, I knew this could only go so far. Eventually, someone would ask who I really was, and when they did, it would all come crashing down, or it would rise to something greater. I needed help. So I called an old friend from the station, Nancy. We had not spoken in over a decade, but when she answered and heard my voice, she gasped. "Ellen, my God, where have you been?" We talked for hours. I told her everything, well, almost everything. She asked if I wanted to come back on air, even for a guest segment. I hesitated. "Not yet," I said. "It's not the right time. I'm building something, quietly." But she offered to help. She connected me to an independent producer who specialized in anonymous interviews. Together, we crafted a special feature, The Forgotten Women. I agreed to appear, but only in shadow, only as a silhouette, no name, just the voice. And the condition? "I want them to know who I am," I told the producer, "but not until the exact moment they're meant to remember. I want it to hit like thunder after a long silence." He nodded. He understood. The day the segment aired, I sat in my room, still the converted laundry space, still forgotten by those just down the hall, and listened to myself tell my story on national television. My voice, wrapped in anonymity, carried through households across the country. "They told me to stay quiet," I said on the recording, "to shrink, to be grateful for crumbs, but I used to speak for a living, and now I speak for the women who no longer can." The clip went viral again, this time even faster. People started digging, trying to guess who I was. Celebrities shared it. Talk shows asked, "Have you seen the shadow grandma?" And just down the hall, my daughter scrawled through her phone, watching the story unfold, completely unaware that the woman being celebrated was the one she asked to stop telling stories at dinner. I watched her through the crack in the door. She had no idea, and that was the most delicious part of all. I never expected it to explode the way it did. One morning, my face, well, the blurred outline of it was on television screens across the country. Grandma's Lonely Birthday, they called it. A soft, haunting clip of a woman lighting a candle for herself, with a voice that made even the most hardened newscasters pause. The segment aired during the 10 p.m. national news. The anchor, a polished man with a smooth baritone, introduced it like a eulogy. "Tonight," he said, "a story that has touched the hearts of millions. A voice from the shadows, a grandmother, forgotten in her own home, finding a way to speak louder than ever without raising her voice at all." Then they played it, my story, in my words, layered with gentle piano music and black and white clips of aging hands lighting a candle, folding napkins, stirring soup. The world listened. I read the comments with trembling fingers. This broke me. I sent this to my mom and cried. This woman is my grandmother, my neighbor, my heart. Flowers started arriving at P.O. boxes I never gave out. People donated to charities in my honor. Artists painted stills of my hand holding the candle. One woman even tattooed the words, "Still Heard," on her wrist. And with every post, every comment, every hashtag, the mystery deepened. Who was Grandma's lonely voice? People tried to analyze my background sounds, my dialect, even the silverware glimpsed in the video. They tried to match the cadence of my speech with old TV anchors. Reddit threads popped up, connecting dots that had no business being connected. TikTok sleuths compiled conspiracy theories like modern Sherlocks. Meanwhile, just one hallway away from me, my daughter scrolled. She had been irritable for days. Her followers were asking if she had seen the viral grandma. Her inbox flooded with articles titled, "The Forgotten Generation Speaks," and "Who Hurt Her?" Friends tagged her in posts. Clients sent her DMs. Some joked, some not so jokingly. "Hey, this sounds like your mom, haha." I could see it in her eyes. The math was clicking. She would tilt her head when I walked by, watch me longer than usual, squint like she was trying to hear the viral voice inside the woman who folded her towels and stirred her tea. But she was not sure, not yet. She never really listened to me before, and so now, even as the world was listening, she still doubted what her own ears might tell her. Until the station called. Nancy, my old friend, left me a voicemail. Breathless, excited, and a little nervous. "Ellen, CBS wants to do a follow-up. They want you to come in, live, no shadows this time." I sat on the edge of my narrow bed for a long time before calling her back. "I can't," I said softly. "Why not? You'd be embraced like royalty." "That's not the moment I'm waiting for," she paused. "But they're asking. They're begging. You're the voice of the forgotten. They want the world to know your face." I was quiet. Then I said, "They'll know. But not yet. Not until it matters most. Not until I've taken back more than just attention. I don't want applause. I want clarity. I want a mirror held up to the people who silenced me, and I want them to see it themselves, in real time." So I wrote a letter. It aired that Sunday, read aloud by the same inker who had introduced my story just days earlier. His voice trembled slightly as he unfolded the cream-colored paper. It read, "To those who asked me to come forward, thank you. Your kindness has meant more to me than I can say, but I will not reveal myself yet, because I was not silenced in a single moment. I was erased slowly, by familiarity, by entitlement, by the kind of casual cruelty that hides in plain sight, and I will not give that cruelty the satisfaction of a face just yet. I don't seek fame. I had that once, in a quieter form. I seek justice, not the loud kind, but the kind that sits across from you at dinner and reminds you what you chose to ignore. To my daughter, if you recognize my voice, and I believe part of you does, don't ask me to forgive. Don't expect me to forget. I don't return pain with screaming. I return it with silence. And in that silence, I hope you hear everything you chose to miss." The response was overwhelming. The internet turned into an army. "Who is Ellen?" started trending within the hour, even though I had never signed my full name. People dug through old radio recordings, matched cadence and tone. They pulled out photos from station archives. An old clip from 1989, me in a red blazer, announcing school closings during a snowstorm, circulated again, side by side with screenshots of the viral hand over the birthday cake. The pieces came together, and so did the speculation. Local news stations started reporting. Could Texas' beloved former anchor be the shadow grandma? Commentators debated it on morning shows. One young influencer posted, "If her daughter's not crying and shaking right now, she has no soul." And then the real flood began. Every woman over 50 with a daughter in PR, marketing, or social media was suddenly under suspicion. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. People demanded names, apologies, consequences. And slowly, the microscope zoomed in on a certain house in Texas. A certain influencer mom who had recently scrubbed her posts of any mention of her mother, whose kitchen backsplash looked suspiciously like the one in the background of the viral videos, whose tone when she spoke on her live streams had a faint whiff of defensiveness. It was not long before someone found her old blog post, one where she mentioned her mother used to be a local TV anchor. One fan screenshotted and added the caption, "Girl, you in danger." The backlash was swift. Brands began distancing themselves. Comments flooded in. "Is this you? Did you forget her birthday? You said mom should be celebrated. Was yours?" Her silence only made it worse. She posted a story, just a black screen with the words, "Not everything you read is true." It did not help. The world had heard my voice, and now they had turned it back on her and me. I stayed in my room. folded laundry, sipped my tea, lit another candle, watched the fire catch. She called it the Bloom Gala, an exclusive evening to celebrate the next phase of her brand. A natural beauty line supposedly inspired by women who nurture, heal, and elevate. There were banners with soft floral tones, long tables draped in cream linen, and crystal glasses arranged like soldiers in formation. It was live-streamed across multiple platforms. Dozens of influencers in pastel dresses took selfies against a backdrop that read, "Honor her light." And at the center of it all, my daughter stood in white silk, holding a microphone and speaking with the confidence of someone who believed her version of the story would never be challenged. I had never been invited, of course not, but I showed up anyway. Nancy was the one who helped me get in. Press credentials, borrowed blouse, one whisper to the production crew. They knew. Everyone in that room would know. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I made my way through the lobby. No one recognized me, not at first. I looked like any other elegant older woman, possibly a donor, maybe a mentor. I even smiled at the staff as I walked by, as if I belonged there. Inside, the room pulsed with quiet glamour. Soft music, white roses, glasses of champagne, lifted mid-set. And at the front, my daughter, center stage, soaking in the spotlight she had fought so ruthlessly to maintain. She began her speech with a breathy, practiced sincerity. This brand is about honoring the women who raised us. The mothers, the grandmothers, the caretakers whose strength made our beauty possible. I nearly laughed, but I did not come for laughter. I came for the moment. The moment we had planned with the production team. The moment when the screens, massive LED walls behind her, would shift from brand slogans to something far more honest. And then it happened. The music faded, the lights dimmed, and suddenly, projected behind my daughter, was the familiar image of a single flickering candle. My voice, soft but unmistakable, filled the room. My name is not important, but today I turned 70. Alone, gasps rippled through the audience. Phones went up, the live stream paused, then spiked in viewers by the tens of thousands. My daughter froze. Her eyes darted across the crowd as the video continued. They live in the same house, you see, but I was told not to expect a party. Somewhere, someone whispered. That's her. That's the grandma. Cameras turned, and then the spotlight found me. I was standing near the back, hands clasped, face steady. Someone yelled, "Grandma just crashed her daughter's fundraiser!" I stepped forward, slow, deliberate, like a woman who'd waited her whole life for this walk. The crowd parted as I moved through it, and by the time I reached the stage, the only sound in the room was the echo of my shoes. She was still frozen, microphone in hand, mouth slightly open. I took the mic gently. She did not resist. I looked at the crowd, at the cameras, the influencers, the silent, stunned guests, and I said, "Thank you for being here tonight. It means more than you know." Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper, cream-colored, folded twice. My will. I unfolded it slowly and read, "To my only daughter, who once told me I did not deserve a birthday party, today I return the favor. You do not deserve the fortune you counted on. You do not deserve the silence I once gave you. You do not deserve a legacy built on lies." A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. I continued, "This is my updated will, notarized, filed, legal. The entirety of my estate, including my savings, my investments, and the property you once assumed would be yours, has been transferred to the Still Heard Foundation, a fund supporting elderly women who have been neglected by those they raised." I folded the paper, looked my daughter in the eye, and finished. "You told me I was too old for candles, too old for stories, too old to matter. But tonight you learned something I always knew. Voices don't age. They wait." The room erupted. Not with cheers, not yet, but with cameras, with gasps, with the buzzing sound of truth cracking glass. I stepped down, handed the microphone back to the MC, who stared at me like I was the main event, and walked through the crowd as applause began to build, soft at first, then growing. People reached out to touch my arm, to thank me, to say, "I wish my grandmother could have done that." My daughter just stood there, still holding the mic, still waiting for someone to save her from the silence I had once endured alone. No one did. I named it Grandma Voices. Not after myself, not for recognition, but for every woman who ever rocked a crying baby in the dark, then cried alone in the same chair hours later. For every mother who gave everything and was told she gave too little. For every grandmother who raised generations but was dismissed as background noise the moment the spotlight shifted. I took the full $7,500,000, 0 cents, my estate, my savings, my hidden shares, every cent they assumed was already theirs, and poured it into the foundation. A place where forgotten women could speak, be filmed, be heard. A recording studio, modest but warm, was built in the center of a quiet town, with velvet chairs and soft lighting. The first thing you see when you walk in is a sign above the door. Your voice didn't vanish, it was just waiting for the right room. They came in droves. Women in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, women with shaking hands and eyes full of memory. They told stories about wars, miscarriages, love letters burned in kitchen sinks, sons who never called, husbands who forgot birthdays, and the one dress they kept for 40 years, hoping someone would notice. I sat in that room too, sometimes just listening, sometimes reading the letters we received from daughters who regretted everything, sons who finally understood, grandchildren who said they would do better. As for my own daughter, she tried, in her way. She released a public statement, said she had been blindsided, that she respected her mother's voice and was grateful for the lessons learned. Then came the private email. Only 3 sentences, but heavy with a weight she had never carried before. 3 sentences long. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know it hurt that much. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time, and then I wrote back. Sorry is a word. I needed action. I waited too long for both. Now I choose peace, and peace, for me, means distance. I hope you find clarity, but I do not owe you my presence anymore. She never replied. I wasn't angry. I was just finished. And that, I learned, is its own kind of forgiveness. Sometime later, I was invited to Oprah's show. Not the main couch, not a headline segment, just a quiet feature titled Women Who Changed the Narrative. I sat under the soft lights, hands folded, and spoke not as a victim, but as a woman who remembered. I was never angry they forgot my birthday, I said on camera. I was angry they forgot I was still alive. Oprah leaned forward, her voice warm. What do you want people to remember? I smiled. That I didn't disappear. I stepped back so I could step forward again on my own terms. The segment aired on a Tuesday night. On Wednesday, we received over 4,000 letters. One was from a woman in Montana who wrote, "Your voice brought my mother and I back together." Another from a girl in Brooklyn, "I showed my grandma your video and now she's teaching me to sew, thank you." But my favorite came from a boy, maybe 10, who scrawled in big, crooked letters, "Dear Grandma Lady, you're not alone anymore. You have the internet." I laughed until I cried. And then I sat down, pen in hand, and wrote one final story. The one you're hearing now. I never needed a birthday party. I didn't need a balloon or a banner or a cake with my name on it. I just needed someone, anyone, to look me in the eyes and remember I was here. Not as a mother, not as a helper, not as a burden, but as a person, a whole person. So if you're listening now and you're wondering what to do for the woman in your life who gave you everything, start by saying her name, and then listen. Because her voice never left, you just stopped hearing it. And she never stopped speaking. She just needed the world to finally sit down and listen. If this story touched something deep inside you, if it reminded you of your own grandmother, your mother, or even a part of yourself that was once overlooked, silenced, or forgotten, then stay with us. Because here, on Grandma True Stories, we do not just tell stories. We remember them. We honor the voices that once whispered from the corners of kitchens, the backs of church pews, and the edges of family photos. We listen to the women who were told to stay quiet and watch what happens when they finally speak. So if you believe in justice that whispers instead of screams, if you believe revenge doesn't always need to be loud, and if you believe that wisdom doesn't age, it deepens, then subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Because when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens. Subscribe now and let the silence end, one true story at a time.